Today, Germany looks like this. It is a federal state which consists of 16 states. Berlin, Hamburg, and Bremen, with its seaport exclave of Bremerhaven, are called the Stadtstaaten, meaning city-states, while the other 13 states are called Flächenländer, meaning area states. These include 3 special ones, Bavaria, Saxony, and Thuringia, which describe themselves as Freistaaten, meaning free states. I believe the term comes from the transition of Germany from an empire to a republic in 1919. I think at the time most states used the prefix, most have abandoned it since, but these 3 kept it. And so, speaking of names, how did each of these 16 states get their name? That's what we're finding out today. Let's start with the capital of Berlin, one of the 3 city-states. The name Berlin has its roots in an old West Slavic term and may be related to the Old Palabian stem berl or birl, meaning swamp, referring to the terrain of the region. Typical Germanization for place name suffixes of Slavic origin add an au, its, witz, witz, or ich, or even an in as a suffix, and that seems to be the case here. Folk etymology, however, has put a bear into the arms of the city, as if the name were derived from Barlin, which is a diminutive of bar, meaning bear. Then we have another state starting with a B, Bayern, which in English we call Bavaria. The etymological origins of the name Bavarian are from the north of the Danube, coming from the Celtic tribe the Boii, who lived there earlier in history. This tribe is also connected with the origin of the name Bohemia, apparently. There are 2 major derivations of this term, from cow and from warrior. The Boii would thus either be the herding people or the warrior people. In English we say Bavaria, in German they call it Bayern. The origin is the same, I believe, but correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Moving on to Niedersachsen or Lower Saxony. There are 3 Saxonies in Germany. This is the first on our list. The name Saxony itself derives from that of the Germanic confederation of tribes called the Saxons. Before the late medieval period, there was a single duchy of Saxony. The term Lower Saxony was used after the dissolution of the stem duchy in the late 13th century to distinguish the parts of the former duchy ruled by the House of Welf from the electorate of Saxony on one hand and from the duchy of Westphalia on the other. Next is Baden-Württemberg. The modern state of Baden-Württemberg covers the area included in the historical state of Baden, the former Prussian Hohenzollern and Württemberg, hence merging the 2 names together. In modern German, Baden is a noun meaning bathing, but Baden, the original name of the town, derives from an earlier plural form of bad, meaning bath. As with the English place name Bath, other Badens are referred to as hot springs throughout Central Europe. In fact, the springs at Baden-Baden were known to the Romans as aquae, meaning the waters. The origin of the name Württemberg, however, remains somewhat of a mystery. Dating back from the Middle Ages, linguists today believe that Württemberg is a derivation of the Celtic word virodunum, which contains a word for castle, possibly referring to a local fortification. And then Rheinland-Pfalz, or Rhineland-Palatinate, which is also the joining of 2 different names. Rhineland is pretty simple. It means land of the Rhine, referring to the river Rhine that runs throughout or at least near it. In turn, the name of the river Rhine comes from the Middle High German Rhin, ultimately from the Gaulish Rhenos, meaning literally that which flows. The amount of places in the world that have this same etymology, but in some local language, is crazy. The word Pfalz is a derivation of the Latin word palatium, meaning palace. The English equivalent is Palatinate, which is sometimes used to refer to the Pfalz. The Saxon Saxony is just that, Saxon, which as we saw comes from the name of the Germanic confederation of tribes called the Saxons. If we want to go a level deeper, as we did with the Rhine River, we can learn about the origin of the term Saxon itself, which seems to be derived from the sax, a knife used by the tribe as a weapon. While we today associate the term sax historically with a specific knife used by these specific people, it seems the original word was simply the word that these people used for any type of small knife or dagger. Now, speaking of Germany, have you ever been jealous of the specific shows they have in the catalog of one of their streaming services? Well, with the sponsor of this video, you can browse the internet as if you were in Germany or pretty much anywhere else in the world, presenting NordVPN. Unlike many other VPNs, Nord is one that actually works the way that it says it does, and does it in a super fast way. No gigantic loading times every time you refresh a page. I use it quite often when researching for videos. Some map repositories especially are blocked outside the US for some reason, and NordVPN allows me to access them. They also set themselves apart from other competitors because they're not just a VPN, but also offer a complete array of services for online security, just like MeshNet, which is a way to safely connect directly to other devices no matter where they are in the world, works just like LAN, and it's perfect for sharing files quicker, or threat protection, which keeps away all trackers and malware. So get NordVPN on a 2-year plan and enjoy 4 months for free at nordvpn.com/knowledge, and depending on which sign-up package you choose, you can get those additional services too. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And now, back to the video. Moving on to Thüringen or Thuringia, which has a similar etymology to Bayern. The name Thuringia or Thüringen derives from the Germanic tribe Thuringi, who emerged during the migration period. It's pretty odd, but we have no certain historical records of where this tribe came from. The Thuringians do not appear in classical Roman texts under that name, but some have suggested that they were the remnants of the Suebic Ermanduri, the last part of whose name, Duri, could represent the same sound as Thuri, and the German suffix ing suggests a meaning of descendants of the Hermanduri. Considering the Hermanduri were the people identified by the Romans as living in this region, it's very likely that this theory is correct. And next is Hessen. The origin of the state name here seems to be the same as the previous one, possibly deriving from the plural form of the name of the inhabitants or tribe, the Hessians. There's also a theory that the place was just called Hesse and then changed into Hessen because of the way the locals were referred to. There wasn't much information about this one, so if you know any more, please let me know. Then Nordrhein-Westfalen or North Rhine-Westphalia. This one consists of the area north of the Rhine River, the etymology of which we learned about earlier already when we talked about Rhineland itself. But what about Westphalia? The first component of the name is from the Proto-Germanic Westra, meaning west, while the second part could perhaps come from the Proto-Indo-European term ple, meaning flat or field. It could therefore mean the West Field or the West Flatland. The name Westphalae was first mentioned in the Franconian Imperial Annals of 775 as the name of a subtribe of the Saxons. The ancient Saxons were in fact divided into 3 main groups: the Westphalians, the Angrians, and the Eastphalians. While the other areas ended up taking different names, these remained the same. And speaking of Saxonies, next is the third Saxony, Saxon-Anhalt. Again, a combination of 2 different names, the first of which we already learned about. The second part of the name, however, is Anhalt, which takes its name from Anhalt Castle near Azergrod. The origin of the name of the castle remains unknown. Anhalt was once its own principality dating back centuries. The fortification was built by Count Otto of Ballenstedt, a member of the Saxon noble house of Ascania. According to legend, the name is derived from the Middle Low German Anholt, built without wood, maybe referring to the fact that the fortification was entirely made of stone, but this is just speculation. Some also say that it would come from a late Middle High German term meaning stopping point. The state surrounding Berlin is Brandenburg, and its etymology seems pretty straightforward despite being unconfirmed, as is the case with many others on this list. The origin of the name Brandenburg is believed to be West Slavic too, coming from the term Brani Boru, meaning defensive forest or war forest. I actually thought that Berlin had only been recently separated from Brandenburg, perhaps during the Cold War or after German reunification, but it turns out it has been this way since 1881, when during Prussian rule, the city of Berlin was separated from the province of Brandenburg for administrative reasons. Next is Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. Again, a 2-word name, so let's learn about each individually. The name Mecklenburg derives from a castle named Michaelenburg, Old Saxon for big castle, located between the cities of Schwerin and Wismar. Today the name has been modernized into Mecklenburg Castle itself, but the way it got its name is pretty interesting. A traveling merchant called Ibrahim ibn Yaqub first described it as Nakon's castle in 965 AD. 30 years later, however, it was documented as Mecklenburg or Michaelenburg, meaning large castle in Old Saxon, Saxon, the ancient version of Low German, Mikil meaning large and Burg meaning castle. And interestingly, the original name of the castle was most likely Veligrad or Viligrad, which also means large castle but in the Slavic Palavian dialect, which was previously spoken in the region. When it comes to Vorpommern, it seems to mean close to Pomerania, Pomerania being a historical German Empire region, some of which is now part of modern Poland. The German prefix vor denotes a close location. Pomerania itself derives from the West Slavic languages. The prefix po means along or at, and the base word mor means sea, so that together pomor means land at the sea. Then we have the second city-state, Hamburg, which comes from the first permanent building on the site of the modern city. It was a castle which the Emperor Charlemagne ordered constructed in the year 808 as a defense against Slavic incursion. Burg was a word used for castle or fort, while the prefix's origin, Hammer, remains somewhat uncertain. The most likely explanation would be that it comes from an old High German term, Ham, which means bend or angle, either referring to the shape of the castle or to the shape of the area it was built on. In fact, the area in which it was built is a marsh between the river Ulster and the river Elbe, so maybe it was the angle at which the two rivers met. And what about Schleswig-Holstein? It is again a joining of the names of two different regions. Both areas were once under Danish rule, and so their origins are more or less connected with Danish terms. For instance, Schleswig takes its name from Schlei, an inlet of the Baltic Sea. The inland itself takes its name from the Old Danish term Slei, meaning muddy waters, and Vik or Vig, which means bay in Old Norse and Danish. Schleswig or Slesvig therefore means Bay of the Schlei, while Holstein's name comes from the Olsetai, another Saxon tribe mentioned by Adam of Bremen as living on the north bank of the Elbe River to the west of Hamburg. The name means dwellers in the wood or hill sitters. Next we have Saarland, which using the suffix land necessarily means land of the Saar. It is named after the river Saar, a tributary of the Moselle, which itself is a tributary of the Rhine, which runs through the state from the south to the northwest. While slightly larger than the combined area of the three city-states, Saarland is by far the smallest of the Flakenlander, the area states. The name Saar itself stems from the Celtic word Sara, meaning streaming river. The Roman name of the river was also Saravus, already an adaptation from the original Celtic term. And finally, the third city-state, Bremen. The place name is, like many others here, from Old Saxon, specifically from the word bremo, meaning edge. It refers to its location on a riverbank. A fun fact is that the Old Saxon word came in turn from the Old Norse term barmr, which meant rem, and is the common ancestor of the modern English word brim, itself very similar to Bremen. So, that is the origin and meaning, so essentially the etymology of each German state name. Many of them being combinations of two different names of regions encompassed by the modern state borders, many being named after local rivers, and many others being named from old Saxon terms or after the Saxons themselves, if not one of the other local tribes that lived in the regions, with the exceptions of those being further east, which take their name from the German adaptations of Slavic terms. Do you disagree with any of these definitions, or do you have any additional information or corrections about any of them? Let me know in the comments along with your suggestions of which countries' regions I should do an etymology video on next. Thanks for watching this video, subscribe to catch future ones, and I will see you next time for more general knowledge.